Good morning, everybody. This is a live update with Hurricane Elsa having formed on approach to Barbados in the early morning hours. Barbados recorded a max sustained wind of 74 miles an hour with a gust up to 86 miles an hour. So that confirmed that Elsa is indeed a hurricane. We saw that convective explosion yesterday evening. That preempted that strengthening. There were hot towers, multiple hot towers rotating around and then consolidating around that center. And that diabatic heating max led to surface pressure falls that led to a more organized tropical cyclone on approach to Barbados. Radar also showed a pretty stout northern eye wall on that storm. It is down to about 995 millibars. The latest Hurricane Hunter aircraft did show that this storm wasn't incredibly organized at 700 millibars, a little bit higher up. But it does look like this is the main inner core of that hurricane. You've also got this trailing convective blob back behind it, a little bit of subsidence around this core as well. And this hurricane is accelerating. This thing is going to haul ass around the southern edge, the periphery of that monster Bermuda High off to the north. And just like last year, I think if anywhere you want to hedge relative to the models, you want to hedge a little bit south when you're looking at those ensembles, because it certainly seems like the subtropical highs up there, those Bermuda highs extending even into the southeastern U.S., are a lot stronger and more resilient than many of the models can resolve. Last year, the western edge of that Bermuda High extended all the way into the southeastern U.S., which forced a lot of those storms into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, or even to develop there as well. So here we do have this Category 1 Hurricane Elsa moving rapidly off to the west-northwest. And hurricane warnings have just been added to the southern coast of the Dominican Republic, just in case there is a further north turn. Hurricane warnings also in effect for the southern coast of Haiti there. And look at this trend. Is it even a little bit further west now, that official forecast track, taking it just to the east of Havana and then up toward the west coast of Florida. Now is a higher end tropical storm. But some of the new model guidance, the GFS ensembles especially, are taking this thing even a little bit further west, like a bowling ball into the central Gulf of Mexico. So you still want to keep an eye on this thing all the way throughout the Gulf of Mexico coastline and the western coastline of Florida there. Even the Yucatan could be in play with this system. Some of the models kind of show a couple different camps with the ensembles, a further west track and one that is recurving. But now it looks like these models are trending a little bit further west now that it's a stronger storm. Beta drift a little bit stronger as well, encouraging a more westward trajectory as you're pulling down that higher vorticity air from the higher latitudes on the west side of the tropical cyclone and bringing up those lower Earth's vorticity values up from the southern latitudes on the east side of that tropical cyclone. A stronger, larger storm. Beta drift will have more of an effect. Look at this outflow pattern as well. The anticyclonic outflow aloft. You can see the feathery appearance to this outflow, definitely suggesting a much healthier storm than at this time yesterday, seeing that big outflow pattern fan out like that. Looks like the environmental shear is relatively minimal, but the rapid storm motion from east to west can lead to a bit of a tilted storm, a little bit more asymmetric at times. The storm relative shear with that very rapid motion from east to west can even generate, the storm relative, it can generate storm relative wind shear that can lead to a little bit more of a tilted storm. But that definitely wasn't a factor overnight last night as this storm intensified into a Category 1 hurricane on approach to Barbados. And it looks like that inner core just passed to the north of St. Vincent, to the north of Kingstown, Georgetown. Up here, this is the island of St. Vincent there. The far northern part of that island does look like it had some of the worst. But that northern eye wall was just to the north of there. Beaufort, Castries up there likely experienced some pretty dangerous easterlies as well on the north side of that system. But this thing is moving incredibly rapidly, and it's only going to accelerate on approach to southern Hispaniola here. And it's all because of that monster high pressure, that Bermuda High off to the north. And here you can see on the Pivotal Weather website here, looking at the GFS model, you can definitely see that monster Bermuda High up here, just to the east of Bermuda, but it does have this lobe of anticyclonic flow extending off to the west as well. So if this high pressure is more resilient and that east coast trough basically shears out over the top of it. There is going to be an East Coast trough here that evolves that could carve out a bit of a weakness into the western edge of that anticyclone. The European model, some of the other models are latching onto that, but they had a weaker storm down here in the Caribbean. The GFS seems to have a better initialization of this hurricane. Waiting patiently for the new European model guidance this morning to see if the models still bring a weaker storm dying over Hispaniola, over the higher terrain there, and due to land interaction, and does it turn off to the north and potentially even miss the U.S., or with this stronger hurricane in that rapid motion, does it just continue like a bowling ball, miss Hispaniola just to the south, maybe slam Jamaica, and then head over the western tip of Cuba and into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, where it would re-intensify. Many of the new models are showing a further south track even more with this stronger tropical cyclone. And the European model had a much weaker system, kind of a fluffy system turning off to the north into that weakness. It had a stronger East Coast U.S. trough. But I have a feeling that this subtropical high is going to be a lot more resilient than many of the models are resolving here, like we saw on numerous occasions last year as well. So that's the official forecast track. I do expect this storm, as it moves rapidly off to the west, maybe will generate some storm relative shear and could lead to a more tilted vortex here. But look at that beautiful outflow pattern. Definitely looks like a large tropical cyclone that is probably just going to continue to intensify. Some of those hurricane model intensity forecasts that are coming out, the new 12Z model runs, show intensification up to a Category 2 storm, and that includes the ship model. Rapid intensification even does appear possible on approach to the southern edge of Hispaniola. And with this fast motion, that's really the only thing that could prevent this from becoming an even stronger hurricane on approach to the southern coast of Dominican Republic and Haiti there. That it looks like it's going to pass over the west coast, western edge of Cuba, maybe very close to the Havana area as well, and then could pass into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And I mentioned that the 6Z runs of the GFS that we're able to pick up on a slightly stronger storm on approach to Barbados here. These are the 6Z runs. I'm still waiting on the 12Z. But this model definitely is showing a trend a little bit further west. And look at those oranges there, the orange colors, and the reds here in the Gulf of Mexico. That shows a more robust storm with some re-intensification after it passes over the western edge of Cuba. But you can still see a lot of uncertainty ranging anywhere from the northern coast of the Yucatan all the way to missing the U.S. completely. But we have seen a little bit less in the way of those members showing a recurve along a weakness in that subtropical ridge. So basically, I think that we're trending toward a weaker trough that's going to shear out over top this Bermuda High. And I think that we're going to have a more resilient, stronger anticyclone there, anchored over the subtropics. And given this fast motion along its southern periphery, this thing easily could just behave like a bowling ball and head a little bit further west into the central and the eastern Gulf of Mexico. But all these little members up there that are showing red, that are showing orange, that looks like a stronger storm, potentially impacting anywhere from the Louisiana coastline to the west coastline of Florida to even east of there. But we definitely are seeing a reduction of those members off to the eastern side of that envelope. But we're likely going to see this go back and forth, almost like a windshield wiper effect, as the infamous Bernie Rayno suggested. A lot of times you'll see the models all go off in one direction and they'll all trend back to the other direction. And you just have to take these forecast models with a bit of a grain of salt. But we definitely do have a stronger storm out there. And let's see how the new GFS handles this Bermuda High compared to yesterday. And this is the GFS. There you can see Hurricane Elsa well down to the south, analyzed a little bit weaker than it actually is right now, so keep that in mind as well. But still does have a stronger storm here progressing off to the west. And look at this monster sprawling subtropical high off to the north, really hanging on here through the night tonight. You can see some storms there on its western periphery associated with that east coast trough. But this thing is resilient. It's hanging tight there just to the east of Bermuda. And look at this lobe extending out to the southwest of it as well. The shape, the egg shape of this anticyclone is also crucial because that'll push this storm a little bit off to the south of Hispaniola, encourage that southern track over the western edge of Cuba, and then this thing could easily head even into the central Gulf of Mexico and be some big problems. But we do have hurricane warnings that have been issued for the southern coast of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Tropical storm watches also have been issued for the island of Jamaica there. Probably need some hurricane watches as well if there is this further west track that it looks like the 12Z operational GFS is suggesting. Maybe even a direct hit there in Jamaica tomorrow night. So that would be Saturday night. So we could try to fly into the Dominican Republic and work the southern coast there, maybe down to the tip near the Haiti-Dominican Republic border. But then there is a decent chance of being stuck down there in the Dominican Republic, and then that storm could easily miss it to the south and then head toward Jamaica, which is one of the risks when you're island hopping and trying to chase these storms. Then it looks like it begins to undergo some land interaction, whether this further south track near Jamaica happens or whether it's further north, interacting with the more mountainous central and eastern portion of Cuba there. A slightly weaker storm could encourage a further north track right up that weakness in the subtropical ridge. A larger, stronger storm also has beta drift, which encourages that more westerly direction. Can behave more like a bowling ball as well, kind of carving out its own anticyclonic pocket aloft, and that would encourage a further west track. Oftentimes people say that a stronger storm, a deeper storm, can be more easily steered by the upper level winds and could encourage a further north track. But in my experience, seeing these very stronger storms, a lot of times that beta drift term will give these storms a mind of their own and cause a more westerly track instead of and basically ignoring the highway that is the upper level steering mechanisms there. And in this case, it looks like that east coast trough is a lot weaker, shearing out over top that strong subtropical high, but the operational GFS still takes this system up through central Cuba, maybe over the Florida Straits as well. But this is just one model. You really need to look at the GFS ensemble to truly assess the uncertainty with these systems as well. And there is quite a bit of uncertainty with the track anywhere from the Yucatan to missing Florida completely to passing over the western edge of Cuba here, Cuba, and then re-intensifying over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And it does look like this system will start to encounter some southwesterly shear as well. You do have a bit of an upper level low here, just a little bit of cyclonic curvature over the central Gulf Coast, a little bit of a subtle trough here. So it does look like one thing that could save or be kind of a positive for the Gulf Coast is that it does look like when this storm system moves into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, it certainly could encounter a little bit of southwesterly shear. Definitely leading to that turn off to the north, and that wind shear also could cause a stabilizing effect on the intensity as it heads through the eastern Gulf of Mexico. But you know how this goes. A lot of times the official forecast track will show a weaker storm, and it does look like that southwesterly shear will wane a little bit. With this system as well. And it could have a bit of a reinvigoration of the storm system later in the period, closer to Tuesday evening into Wednesday, as this thing's sliding up northward now, turning off to the north in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And it does look like it's a lower end storm as it goes through the eastern Gulf of Mexico. A little more asymmetric, possibly being impacted by that southwesterly shear as it moves through the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Sea surface temperatures also are a little bit cooler in association with that loop current here in the eastern Gulf of Mexico than they are in the western and central Gulf. So a further west track could be a little bit more favorable for re-intensification in the Gulf of Mexico and a little bit of an avoidance of that southwesterly shear. It does look like that shear wanes, though, as this approaches the coastline on a Wednesday type of a situation here. So we just have to keep watching it very closely. The timing looks like the early to middle portion of next week. Looks like on Monday, this thing's going to be passing over Cuba. Probably going to be very close to the Keys. Likely will be some tropical storm conditions as well with this track in the Keys. But this is just one model here, the operational model. And looking at the spread, at least of the 6Z GFS, it does look like this trend back to the west is continuing a little bit. The European model still has a weaker storm recurving, at least last night's European model. But that was before we knew that it was going to be such a strong storm as well. This also shows a stronger East Coast trough with a greater influence on eroding that Bermuda High, kind of shimming it down to the southeast, leads to a northward turn of a weaker tropical cyclone here. Gets shredded over Hispaniola. So I'm going to be waiting patiently for the 12Z model guidance as well to see what that shows. Here's the NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft mission. Flying through Elsa right now as we speak. Flying toward Elsa. Looks like they're just starting to get into the center now with this extrapolated MSLP. Get a little bit closer to that 1,000 millibars. So right now this mission is just heading in to the storm. So pretty excited to see what these results show. Notice the increase in the flight level winds, that decrease in pressure as that Hurricane Hunter aircraft is getting a bit closer. Drop sound. There we go. There's Barbados. There's St. Vincent. So this is the current mission flying through the storm right now. It's like they're trying to sample that lead. Got the westerlies there, southerlies. Now they're going to curl back around. Whew. Barbados had that 86 mile per hour wind gust this morning, definitely confirming that this thing is a Category 1 hurricane. So really interesting to see this real-time data come in here from the NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft. Let's take a look at satellite again. I wonder if this core will kind of become less dominant, and then this convection, this blob, trailing blob of convection will take off, and then it'll probably wrap this little center all the way around it and then form a new center. Probably not. It'll probably just maintain its identity there. It does look to me like there is a little bit of a convective burst pretty close to the center there. See one of those hot towers, as we call them, little supercell storm there zipping around that center. A little bit of subsidence here on the backside of that core as well. And this thing is moving extremely fast, this tropical cyclone. And my plan, of course, is to intercept this if it continues these trends, certainly. Definitely see this healthy lead core here with convection expanding. So it has this massive outflow pattern. You zoom out and it looks like a large storm, but it does have this relatively small central dense overcast here that is moving pretty rapidly out ahead of it. You have this trailing area of storms as well. A little convergent zone there. A lot of times you'll get those little double convective maxes with these hurricanes. And Barbados is where that wind gust to 86 miles an hour was recorded. A max sustained wind of 74. But boy, this thing looks to be overperforming and certainly could impact portions of the Dominican Republic. Jamaica, keep a very close eye on this. With that westward trend, there is definitely a potential direct impact possibility there for Jamaica, potentially as a Category 1 hurricane, maybe even a stronger storm. Some of those intensity models, as we showed you, it's from the incredible tropicaltidbits.com website where you can analyze a lot of this model data. The official forecast keeps it basically a very high-end tropical storm, almost a hurricane, as it's going to be dealing with that land interaction as it passes relatively close to mountainous southern coastline of Hispaniola, very close to Jamaica, which is also very mountainous, and then passing over central or western Cuba, which has quite a bit of terrain. And then as it moves into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, it should encounter a bit of some southwesterly wind shear that could delay some of that re-intensification a bit. But boy, you look at the late 60 GFS ensemble and definitely shows some of those members show some stronger storms into the central and eastern Gulf of Mexico. One thing that this map shows me is that if you're living in New Orleans, for example, Mobile, Alabama, Gulfport, Mississippi, Florida Panhandle, this storm is definitely in play for you, and that's why you need to keep a very close eye on this thing as we go over the holiday weekend. Stay sharp over the weekend. This thing is going to be passing over near the western edge of Cuba on Monday into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and then toward the middle portion of next week, and impact anywhere from Louisiana all the way through the west coast of Florida as well. Getting updates that Bernie Rayno thinks that the Bermuda High is weakening more rapidly than many of the models are indicating, including the GFS model. He thinks that the European is onto something with a stronger East Coast trough out there, and that will cause this Bermuda High to be a little bit more pinched off, a little bit off to the southeast. And if that happens, then we'd see a further north track, potentially a little bit closer to Haiti, the mountainous terrain there. Maybe the Bahamas then still would be in play, and then we'd have a further north track that potentially could even miss the East Coast or be a Carolina or East Coast of Florida type of an impact. Bernie says that Saturday, tomorrow, is going to make or break this system on whether that stubborn Bermuda High can maintain itself up there, maintain its blocking regime off to the north of this, and continue a faster storm, a bowling ball that heads into the central and eastern Gulf of Mexico. Or does that Bermuda High weaken a little bit more rapidly with time and get pushed off to the southeast? And then that will mean that the European model is right, with a weaker storm turning off to the north and then potentially missing the East Coast. So our lives tomorrow are going to be critical on how this Bermuda High evolves. And they're kind of difficult to model. They're up there in that subtropical belt. Sometimes they can have a mind of their own and be a lot stronger than the models indicate. Be more resilient, causing troughs to basically shear out over the top of them. But if that East Coast trough is just a little bit stronger, as you might expect this early in the season for Bermuda Highs, then I think that it could easily break down that western edge of the Bermuda High, cause it to focus a little bit further southeast of Bermuda, and that would lead to a further north track. Still trying to get my legs here with hurricane forecasting. Looks like we do have, I think this is new, relatively. No. But we'll show it here anyway. So it's the 11 a.m. advisory. Showing those hurricane warnings as well in red. Hurricane watch as well in Jamaica there in pink. Tropical storm warning has been issued. Tropical storm warning as well on the eastern coastline there of the Dominican Republic, but a little bit closer to the Haiti border, especially that southern tip under those hurricane warnings in red. Right now you can see the current storm is just past to the east of St. Vincent as of 11 a.m. Atlantic time. And this still shows that track right over central Cuba to the east of Havana, and then arriving there near the Tampa Bay area, just a little bit to the south of that, potentially there by 8 a.m. Tuesday. But you can see how the cone expands a little bit, showing that uncertainty, even showing that potential earlier northward turn that is being indicated by the European model there. Some of these hurricane models are coming in as well, basically in agreement with the official forecast track. But look at this camp a little bit further to the south, showing a direct impact here. Kingston, Jamaica in about 48 hours. Rapidly moving storm. Look at this thing. In 24 hours, it's going to be due south of the Dominican Republic. In 48 hours, it's going to be right near Kingston, Jamaica. And then you still have a couple of these members showing a recurvature with that weaker Bermuda High. The H-Wharf there takes it right up the west coast of Florida into Tampa Bay. And as Bernie says, he's a legend in this type of forecasting. He says that this Bermuda High is going to weaken a little bit faster, and he thinks they're going to slosh back to this further north solution. But he says that tomorrow is pivotal. So these live briefings, tune in tomorrow, and we'll let you know if this furthest west track wins out, or does that Bermuda High weaken a little bit faster and cause a weakness to develop near the Bahamas and just off the east coast, which would lead to a more rapid northward turn, potentially even missing the east coast completely in that scenario. So those are the 12Z hurricane model updates. A ship model even has it increasing back up to near category 2 storm there with that forecast track. And let's look at the ship model there in green. Yeah. A lot of these hurricane models that have it passing over central Cuba and a little bit closer to the west coast of Florida are likely picking up on that southwesterly shear that the storm does encounter there in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. We just saw a little bit of southwesterly shear that will encourage that turn off to the north. But what a well-organized storm. When I went to sleep last night and saw that convective blob, here's our lead tropical wave here that could have carved out a path for this storm to continue to intensify. Now the new forecast track has a new NHC forecast has this thing intensifying into a little bit stronger, up getting 80 mile per hour maximum sustained winds on approach to eastern Jamaica. So definitely need to keep an eye on this southern coast of Haiti, Dominican Republic, with this stronger storm and some forecast track uncertainty, especially that increases later on. This thing definitely could have some much worse impacts here along the east coast of Jamaica. So from a storm chasing perspective, just depends on whether you want to gamble on that. You want to gamble on that further west track. The latest operational GFS takes it very close to Kingston on the eastern edge of Jamaica there. So it all just depends on if you want to gamble on that further west track. There's a chance that it could pass off to your east. You'll be on the weak side of that storm system. And then you'd miss the U.S. landfall as well there in the west coast of Florida. So those are the types of decisions that you go through when you're trying to track down these tropical cyclones in the Caribbean. But you definitely see it looks like it's getting better organized. Does look like that convective blob is kind of caught back up with that lead inner core of this system. It's starting to show a little bit of that tilting with this rapid storm motion, having a little bit of deep layer storm relative shear. I think this thing will at times have a tendency to have its central dense overcast on the eastern edge of these big convective explosions, but this is definitely getting to become better organized based on its satellite presentation. A very healthy outflow pattern as well off to the north there. big feeder bands as well, surging in from the south here. Very healthy feeder bands as well. So this is a healthy storm, and I definitely agree with the National Hurricane Center having this as a stronger Category 1 storm on approach to this Haiti-Jamaica zone here. And we're going to be watching it tomorrow very closely to see what the behavior of that Bermuda High off to the north of it. Is it going to be a weaker Bermuda High with that trough dominating, or is it going to be a very stubborn, solidified Bermuda High there over the Sargasso Sea? You can see the anticyclonic curvature on satellite with this big sprawling high. And then you can see the subtle upper level low here associated with that East Coast trough. Duking it out. Battle here across the Atlantic between that trough and the dominant anticyclone off to the east of it, off to the east of Bermuda, encouraging this rapid west-northwesterly motion, making a beeline toward Haiti and Jamaica. And then will it be further west into the central Gulf of Mexico that'll allow it to be out there a little bit longer? Then it'll reach Tuesday evening into Wednesday when that southwesterly shear starts to wane. And if that happens, then this thing could intensify and become a big problem here for the central Gulf Coast or even the west coast of Florida there as that lifts off to the north. But those are the factors. Hurricane Elsa forecast to continue to intensify. Definitely keep a very close eye on this on the east coast of Jamaica and down there along the southern coast of Haiti and Dominican Republic especially, and the southern coast of Cuba. If that thing slides right between Haiti and Jamaica, then it'll likely be a stronger storm when it arrives on the southern coast of Cuba as well. And if it passes to the west of Havana, then we've got bigger problems for the central and eastern Gulf Coast. So thank you guys for tuning in to my live weather report here. We're going to tune back in tomorrow to see how this dominant Bermuda High there behaves as that trough on the east coast battles it out with that stubborn Bermuda High. If last year is any indicator of how this year is going to behave, that anticyclone is going to be more stubborn than the models will indicate, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a further west track, maybe even over the western edge of Cuba, and eventually into the central and eastern Gulf of Mexico. Have a good rest of your Friday, everybody. Big holiday weekend coming up. Have a great weekend. And I'll continue slinging these live briefings to keep you updated on Elsa and the behavior of that blocking Bermuda High off to its north.